On Thanksgiving, my daughter told me, "Go celebrate alone, we're busy traveling with my in-laws." I gave her everything, and now she thinks I'm useless. She could have asked me to come with her, right? If she left me, I think I have to do something. If you were me, what would you do next? If you want to know what happens, listen to my story. My phone buzzed against the polished marble of the kitchen counter. A smile, slow and warm, spread across my face. It was Lisa, my daughter. Thanksgiving. She was finally responding to my invitation. The air, in my new Beacon Hill villa, smelling of freshly polished wood and old stone, felt full of promise. I had just finished renovating the old place, a labor of love that took over a year, and I imagined the warmth of my family filling its empty spaces. I pictured my daughter, her brilliant smile, and my son-in-law, Paul, sitting at the long mahogany table I'd bought just for this occasion. The text message changed everything. "Go celebrate alone," it read. "We're busy traveling with my in-laws." My hand tightened on the phone. The cold glass, a stark contrast to the heat of the anger that flared in my chest. Go celebrate alone? After everything? The words felt like a physical blow, each one a hammer strike against a lifetime of sacrifice. I thought back to her college years, an endless parade of tuition bills and unexpected expenses from Emory, a prestigious university she insisted on attending. "Dad, I really think psychology is my calling now," she'd say. "A new major every year, and I'd pay every bill without complaint, believing I was investing in her future." I remembered her wedding to Paul, a lavish affair that cost me a small fortune. "We want it to be perfect, Dad," she'd whispered. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime day." I'd paid for the mansion rental, the catering, her wedding dress, a small fortune for a perfect day that now felt like a cruel joke. And the house down payment, that too had come from my pocket. "We found the perfect place, Daddy," she'd said. "It's for when we have kids." But the kids never came, and the endless requests for money never stopped. My heart, once a wellspring of unconditional love, was now a hollow echo chamber of resentment. My beautiful new villa, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a prison. The sting of her text lingered, a bitter aftertaste to 3 decades of devotion. My mind, usually so precise and analytical from years of architectural design, became a chaotic flood of memories. There was the house down payment last year, an $80,000 gift to help them buy their perfect place. It was a gesture of love, a foundation for their future, but every time the phone rang afterward, it was a request for another payment, a car repair, credit card debt, vacation funds. The list stretched back decades, a ledger of my generosity against their endless needs. Each time I'd hear the same reluctant opening, "Dad, I hate to ask, but..." Yet she never hated it enough to stop asking. The worst part was her wedding to Paul. He was a promising young lawyer, she said, but I'd seen the signs, the way he looked at my checkbook with a glint in his eye. My contribution alone was $45,000 for a lavish wedding I secretly feared was built on sand. Now, standing in the quiet grandeur of my new villa, I felt a profound sense of emptiness. This place was supposed to be my reward, my sanctuary after a lifetime of hard work. The soaring ceilings, the panoramic windows overlooking the Massachusetts coastline, it was a testament to decades of smart investments. From a risky cryptocurrency portfolio to tech startups others had dismissed. It was my hard-earned empire, and it was supposed to be a home for my family. But her text message had reduced me to a footnote. "Go celebrate alone." The message was clear. My money was welcome, but my presence was not. The hurt was a dull ache, but as I walked through the silent rooms, it began to harden into something colder, something sharper. I was 65 years old. I had spent my life building things, skyscrapers, homes, and a life for my daughter, only to realize that one of those foundations was built on disrespect. I stopped in the formal living room, my eyes sweeping over the empty space. This wasn't just a house, it was a statement that my life had been about more than just writing checks. A statement that I still had value, influence, and relationships that mattered. I had spent too long being taken for granted, too long being the ghost in my own family's life. That was about to change. She thought she could have her lavish life and exclude the source of it. She thought my holiday would be a lonely affair, just me and my memories. But she was wrong. This house, this monument to my life's work, would be filled with laughter and joy, just not hers. A plan began to form in my mind, a quiet, methodical strategy. I would show her what Thanksgiving looked like when people actually wanted to be there. And I would do it without raising my voice, without an argument, but with an elegance that would expose the shallowness of her own life. I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs and steadying the tremors in my hands. The phone felt heavy, but my resolve was heavier. The first call went to Margaret. She was a renowned chef in Boston, a woman whose friendship had sustained me through the difficult years after my wife's passing. She answered with her usual cheerful energy. "James, my dear, I was just thinking about you. How's the new villa treating you?" Her voice was a balm, but I couldn't sugarcoat the truth. "It's treating me fine, Margaret. But I need to ask you a favor." I told her about Lisa's text message, the one about celebrating Thanksgiving alone while she and Paul were away with his parents. I read the text aloud, the words a fresh wound. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then, Margaret's voice came back, no longer cheerful, but sharp with anger. "That ungrateful little," she began, before catching herself. "James, how long are you going to let her treat you like an ATM?" The question hit me hard because it was the truth I'd been avoiding for years. "Not anymore," I said, the words feeling foreign and liberating. "I'm not letting her." I explained my plan. "I'm hosting a Thanksgiving dinner here, a real one, with people who actually want to be here. I wanted to invite my friends, people who had been by my side through my successes and failures, people who saw me as more than a checkbook." Margaret's tone shifted from anger to fierce support. "I'll be there," she said, her voice brimming with purpose. "And I'll bring my famous mushroom risotto. Consider it done." The conversation with Thomas, a powerful businessman, and an old friend from the world of architecture, was different. He was Paul's professional idol, a man Paul had been trying to impress for years. I dialed his number, my heart pounding with a different kind of anticipation. "Thomas, it's James. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Thomas's voice was strong, his authority clear even over the phone. "James, never a bad time for you. What's up?" I explained my plan for a Thanksgiving dinner at the new villa, emphasizing the guest list. "It's going to be a gathering of old friends and respected colleagues. No family drama, just good company and great conversation." I didn't tell him about Lisa's text. I didn't have to. He knew Paul, and he knew Paul's ambition. He understood the subtext. "I'd be honored to attend, James," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Linda and I have been hoping for an invitation to see the famous villa. Count us in." A warmth, foreign and welcome, spread through my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. With Margaret's promise of risotto and Thomas's RSVP, a new energy coursed through me. My hands, which had trembled with hurt just an hour ago, were now steady and purposeful as I pulled out my contacts list. I scrolled past Lisa's name, a ghost in my phone, and found others. I called Patricia Webb, my former business partner who'd been there when my startup went public. Then Mark Henderson, a fellow architect I'd worked with for decades. One by one, I extended the invitation. Thanksgiving dinner at my new place, I'd say, my voice now ringing with a genuine warmth I hadn't felt in years. Just close friends and colleagues. No drama, just good company. The responses were immediate and overwhelming. "Are you kidding? We've been hoping to see the famous villa. Count us in. Mark and I wouldn't miss it for the world." Each conversation was a balm to my soul, a reminder that my life was not just about the thankless role of a father, but also about the friendships I had built and the respect I had earned. The afternoon flew by in a whirlwind of phone calls and arrangements. I called my contractor, a man who had helped me with the renovations, and hired him to set up a professional lighting system for the garden. I arranged for a local florist to create beautiful Thanksgiving centerpieces. I even pulled out the menu, a yellow legal pad where I began to organize the details. Prime rib, I decided, would be ordered from Morton's Oase. Roasted vegetables and twice-baked potatoes would be the perfect accompaniment. And for the wine, I went down to my wine cellar, a new addition I was particularly proud of, and selected a 2018 cases Cabernet I'd been saving for a truly special occasion. It felt fitting. This was no longer just about filling an empty house. It was about creating a celebration of a life well lived, a life that was finally, truly my own. I walked through the villa again, but this time the silence was not empty. It was filled with the anticipation of laughter, of clinking glasses, of shared memories. The formal dining room, which had felt like a mausoleum for my dashed hopes, now felt like a stage, waiting for its cast. The grief and anger had not vanished completely, but they had been pushed aside by a wave of purpose and excitement. This was my home, and I was finally going to celebrate it, not as a lonely old man, but as a man surrounded by people who valued him for who he was. Lisa had made her choice. Now I was making mine. I could almost picture her face when she saw the photos on social media, the ones Patricia would inevitably post. My plan was set, and for the first time in years, a genuine smile touched my lips. The doorbell chimed at exactly 6 o'clock, its gentle sound a welcome contrast to the jarring text message from days ago. Through the beveled glass of the front door, I saw my brother Robert's familiar silhouette, a bottle of wine in one hand, and his wife Sarah by his side, a covered dish in hers. I opened the door to Robert's broad grin and Sarah's immediate gasp of appreciation. "Jesus, James," Robert said, stepping inside and looking around the two-story entryway with its curved staircase and crystal chandelier. "Photos don't do this place justice." Sarah was already moving through the space, her eyes taking in every detail, her genuine admiration a balm to my soul. "The millwork alone must have cost a fortune," she murmured, gesturing towards the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. "It's like something out of Architectural Digest." Before I could respond, more cars pulled into the circular driveway. Thomas and his wife Linda emerged from their BMW, followed immediately by my friend Mark and his wife, who had been my business partners for years. Within minutes, my foyer was filled with warm greetings, laughter, and genuine excitement. "James, this is incredible," Linda said, turning in a slow circle, her eyes wide with appreciation. "When you said you'd bought a place, I pictured something nice. This is magnificent." Her words hit differently than they would have coming from Lisa. These people weren't calculating what it cost or wondering what they could get from me. They were simply happy for my success, for the culmination of a lifetime of hard work. I led the group through the main living area, pointing out features I'd chosen carefully. The imported marble fireplace, the custom-built bookshelves, the professional-grade sound system. Each detail drew authentic admiration and made me feel a sense of pride I hadn't felt in a very long time. "You've really made it, haven't you?" Mark clapped me on the shoulder, his voice filled with sincere warmth. All those years of smart investing finally paying off. The evening flowed effortlessly, from cocktails in the living room to dinner in the formal dining room. The prime rib was perfect, the wine exceptional, and the conversation moved naturally between shared memories, current projects, and future plans. We talked about the time I invested in a risky tech startup that everyone said was a mistake, and how it had paid off tenfold. We laughed about old times, about our struggles and our triumphs. I felt the warmth of genuine respect, something I'd forgotten existed. These weren't people who saw me as a resource to be tapped. They were friends celebrating a friend's success. As I looked around the table, filled with people who valued my company, not my bank account, a wave of profound happiness washed over me. This was the Thanksgiving I had always wanted. This was family. The evening was a symphony of warmth and genuine connection. The laughter, the animated conversations, it was everything I had envisioned. I found myself in a quiet corner of the living room with Thomas, the scent of old leather and rich wine mingling in the air. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. "James," he began, his voice low and serious, "I need to thank you for inviting me. This is exactly what I needed. But I also need to tell you something." My heart, which had been so light, now felt a familiar twinge of apprehension. I knew that tone. Thomas went on to tell me that Paul had been relentlessly pursuing him for weeks, trying to convince him to invest in a new real estate venture. "He was very insistent, James," Thomas said, a hint of disdain in his voice. "Kept dropping your name, saying you were a family man who valued tradition. It was all very transparent." Thomas, a man who had built his own empire on integrity, had seen right through Paul's facade. "I did my own due diligence," Thomas continued, leaning in closer. Turns out this promising young lawyer has racked up a significant amount of debt from a failed business venture last year. He's underwater, James. He's desperate. The words hit me like a physical blow. Paul, the ambitious, successful lawyer Lisa had married, was a fraud. My stomach churned with a mixture of anger and profound sadness. All this time I had believed Paul was a good man, a hard-working partner for my daughter. But he wasn't. He was a parasite, using Lisa's connections, my connections, to save himself. He's trying to use you to bail him out, James, Thomas concluded, his gaze steady and full of sympathy. He knows your wealth is a lifeline he can't access on his own. He's counting on Lisa's influence with you. I felt a cold rage. This wasn't just about Paul's debt. It was about the years of manipulation, the subtle ways he and Lisa had worked together to extract money from me, all under the guise of family. My grief over Lisa's initial rejection was now overshadowed by a chilling clarity. Her text message, the one about a quiet Thanksgiving with her in-laws, hadn't been about family at all. It had been a strategic choice, a calculated move to align herself with a wealthier family, a family she thought could offer them more than I could. Paul's parents, the Smiths, were from old money, a family of investors, exactly the kind of people who could bail him out. But now, with Thomas's revelation, it all made a terrible, twisted sense. Paul was an anchor dragging Lisa down, and she was so blinded by ambition that she couldn't see it. The festive sounds of my party, once so comforting, now felt distant, a fragile bubble of happiness I had to protect. I knew with absolute certainty that I had to do something, not just for myself, but for my daughter. The warmth of the evening was a stark contrast to the sudden cold that swept into my home. Just as the conversations reached their peak, the front door burst open, not with the gentle chime of a guest, but with the force of a hurricane. It was Lisa and Paul. Their faces were flushed, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and anger as they took in the scene. My friends, my colleagues, the beautiful floral arrangements, the prime rib on the dining room table. "What the hell is this?" Lisa's voice, usually so carefully modulated, was a shriek that cut through the soft jazz music. "What do you think you're doing, Dad?" Her question hung in the air, bringing the entire party to a stunned silence. I walked toward them, my heart a heavy stone in my chest. This was the moment I had anticipated, the confrontation I had planned for, but seeing the raw fury on my daughter's face, a part of me wished it hadn't come to this. "This," I said, my voice calm and even, "is Thanksgiving dinner. I invited friends who wanted to celebrate with me." Lisa's eyes, sharp and calculating, darted around the room, landing on Thomas, Mark, and my brother Robert. Her face twisted into a mask of pure jealousy. "You went behind my back," she accused, her finger shaking as she pointed at me. "You invited everyone except us. How could you do this?" Her gaze lingered on Thomas, the man Paul had been so desperate to impress. The realization of what she had lost hit her like a physical blow. "This is not just a party," she screamed, her voice echoing in the now silent room. "This is a public display! You did this to embarrass us, to show everyone you don't need us!" Paul, looking pale and defeated, tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off. "Honey, let's just go. This isn't the time." But Lisa was beyond reason. She was a storm of raw entitlement and wounded pride. "I've been working my whole life to be accepted by these people, and you just—" She trailed off, her voice cracking with fury. "You just invite them over to your fancy new house without us? It's a slap in the face, Dad." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a venomous anger I had never seen before. "You did this on purpose. You're trying to destroy my life." The accusations, so wild and unfounded, hung in the air, a toxic cloud threatening to poison the beautiful evening I had so carefully created. My friends, who had been so full of warmth and laughter, now watched in a stunned, uncomfortable silence. I stood before my daughter, my heart aching with a pain that was both familiar and new. The woman standing before me with her face contorted in rage was not the little girl I had raised. This was a stranger, fueled by a venomous cocktail of entitlement and jealousy. Paul, her husband, stood behind her, a pale and silent accomplice, his eyes darting between me and the guests. I took a slow, deliberate breath, the scent of wood smoke and roasting prime rib, a strange comfort in this chaotic moment. "Lisa," I said, my voice cutting through her fury with a calmness that surprised even me. I believe I am doing exactly what you asked. Her rage faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of confusion. What are you talking about? She spat. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady as I navigated to our text message thread. I held the screen out to her. You said, "Go celebrate alone. We're busy traveling with my in-laws." I read the words, every syllable landing with the force of a legal deposition. I simply took your advice. I am not alone. I am celebrating with people who value my company. You chose to be elsewhere. Her denial was immediate, a reflex honed by years of manipulation. That's not what I meant, and you know it, she shrieked, her face turning crimson. You are deliberately twisting my words to make me look bad in front of these people. My brother Robert stepped forward, his voice low and firm. We all saw the message, Lisa. There was no room for interpretation. My friend Thomas, a man who commanded respect, nodded in agreement, his silence more powerful than any words. Lisa's gaze flickered between them, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling before her eyes. She had expected to find a lonely, heartbroken old man, eager for her attention. Instead, she found a man surrounded by friends, and a celebration that was a testament to his success. The truth was, she wasn't angry about being uninvited. She was furious that my happiness existed without her permission, that my success was something she could not control or exploit. You're being petty, she accused, her voice now a desperate whisper. You're punishing me for one text message. I looked at her, my heart heavy with the weight of 3 decades. This isn't about one text, Lisa. This is about 30 years of me giving and you taking. It's about me being an ATM with a pulse, and you never seeing the man behind the money. My words hung in the air, a final, unassailable truth. The guests watched in a silent tableau of discomfort and empathy. They knew the unspoken history of our relationship because they had been the silent witnesses to my life. I had taken her accusations and turned them back on her, exposing the raw, ugly reality of our relationship for all to see. Lisa stood in front of me, her face a mask of shock and wounded pride. Fine, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. You can be petty, and you can be cruel, but you can't erase me from your life. I'm your daughter. The guests watched in silence, their eyes filled with pity for the woman who had just publicly humiliated herself. I took a deep breath and turned my attention to Paul, who stood silently behind Lisa, his face pale with fear. Paul, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. I have a question for you. His eyes darted nervously. Your parents, the Smiths, they are very influential people. You have been trying to impress them for years. Paul nodded, his throat tight. Yes, they are very important to my career. I looked at Lisa, then back at Paul. Paul, I said, I have some bad news for you. I was talking to Thomas today, and he told me that he did some digging. He found out that you are deeply in debt from a failed business venture last year. Paul's face went white. That's a lie, he shrieked, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm a successful lawyer. Lisa, her eyes wide with fear, turned to her husband. Paul, what is he talking about? He tried to deflect, but it was too late. Lisa, honey, it's nothing. Just a small business investment that didn't pan out. I looked at my daughter, her face a mixture of confusion and profound sadness. Lisa, I said, my voice gentle, he wasn't taking you to see his parents because they were influential. He was taking you because he was trying to get them to bail him out. He thought your connection to me would help. The truth hung in the air like a physical blow. Paul's parents, the Smiths, had canceled their Thanksgiving trip with them because they had found out about his debts. Lisa's face crumbled. The woman who had been a whirlwind of entitled fury a moment ago was now just a heartbroken daughter, realizing she had been used. She looked at Paul, her eyes filled with a pain that went beyond anger. You used me, she whispered, the words barely audible. You never loved me. You just needed my dad's money. The elegant Thanksgiving dinner had become a theater of shattered illusions, and my daughter was the star of the most devastating performance. The argument between Lisa and Paul erupted into a vicious storm of accusations. You knew about this all along, didn't you? Lisa shrieked at him, her voice cracking with betrayal. You used my dad, you used me. Our whole marriage was a lie. Paul, cornered and exposed, could only stammer weak excuses, but they fell on deaf ears. The elegant dining room, just moments ago a sanctuary of peace and laughter, was now a battlefield of broken promises and shattered dreams. My guests, my friends, watched the spectacle in a stunned silence. My heart, which had been so hardened by anger and disappointment, now ached with a deep paternal sorrow. I had wanted to expose Paul's lies, but I had never wanted to see my daughter so broken. As their argument reached its peak, a profound shift happened within Lisa. The anger, the fury, the sense of entitlement that had defined her for so long, all of it crumbled, leaving only a raw, wounded vulnerability. She turned away from Paul, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry." She wasn't talking about the text message anymore. She was talking about everything. The years of neglect, the constant requests for money, the casual disrespect. It was a confession, a final, painful acknowledgement of the daughter she had become. I walked toward her, my footsteps silent on the thick Persian rug. Paul, sensing the moment of finality, shrank back, a defeated figure in the shadow of his wife's grief. I reached for my daughter, and for the first time in years, she didn't flinch. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close as she wept into my chest. Her sobs, no longer a weapon of manipulation, were the genuine tears of a lost child finally finding her way home. The anger was gone. The hurt was still there, but it was now overshadowed by a flood of unconditional love. The years of sacrifice, the years of feeling like an ATM, none of it mattered in that moment. All that mattered was my daughter, broken and finally, truly, in my arms. I would not let her go. I held my daughter for what felt like an eternity, the silence of the room broken only by her quiet sobs. The guests, my true friends, understood, and slowly began to filter back into the living room, leaving us alone in our private moment of reconciliation. When Lisa's tears finally subsided, she pulled back, her eyes red and puffy, but with a clarity I hadn't seen in years. "Dad," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "I was so wrong." "About everything." I nodded, a lump in my throat. "I know, sweetheart, but we're going to fix this, together." I turned to Paul, who still stood by the doorway, a ghost of his former arrogant self. "Paul," I said, my voice firm but not unkind, "I've heard about your debts. I know you're in a difficult situation." He flinched, expecting a lecture, a condemnation, but I didn't give him one. "I will help you," I continued, "not because you deserve it, but because I believe everyone deserves a second chance, and because I want my daughter to have a husband who is honest with her." I offered to help him pay off a portion of his most pressing debts, on the condition that he be completely transparent with me and Lisa about his finances moving forward. Paul's eyes, filled with shame and desperation just moments ago, now glimmered with a fragile hope. "Mr. James, I don't know what to say. Thank you. I won't let you down." I looked at him, not with the calculating eye of a businessman, but with the weary wisdom of a father who had learned a painful lesson. "You won't be letting me down, Paul. You'll be letting my daughter down. The choice is yours." I looked at Lisa, who was now holding Paul's hand, her gaze a mixture of pain and cautious optimism. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope that our family could be whole again. The last guest departed, leaving the villa in a quiet, warm hush. The clinking of glasses was replaced by the soft crackle of logs in the fireplace. I stood in the foyer, my hand on the doorknob, feeling a profound sense of relief and gratitude. I thought about the man who had walked through these doors in despair just days ago, and the man standing here now, a man who had chosen to forgive, to heal, and to move forward. This was the true meaning of Thanksgiving. I realized I couldn't sell this place. This villa was not just a symbol of my success. It was the stage on which my family's new chapter would be written. I would host many more dinners here, filled with laughter, love, and a genuine sense of belonging. My heart swelled with hope, a feeling that had been dormant for too long. I decided that night to establish a foundation in my late wife's name, dedicated to providing scholarships for young people who, like Paul, were struggling. I wanted to give them a second chance, a fresh start, a way to move forward without the heavy burden of the past. It was a moment of true clarity, a sign from above that my path was one of redemption, not revenge. I realized that a man's true wealth isn't measured by his portfolio, but by the love and respect he earns from those around him, a valuable lesson I learned from my own family story. This was a lesson for Paul and Lisa too, a reminder that in the eyes of God, we are all equal, and we must always seek forgiveness and peace. As a new dawn broke through the windows, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. This Thanksgiving, I was reminded that love, forgiveness, and the grace of God are the most powerful forces in the world. I hope you enjoyed this family story and the lessons it brought. Thank you for listening to this family story. What are your thoughts on James's journey? Share your own experiences in the comments below. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, please subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of our next video.